The top stories. Tourism officials welcome British travel tax break. UWI students say they are focused on fees, not parties, as Carnival is cancelled. And Windies cricket legends lose their coaching roles for this year's CPL. Welcome to Nation News for Wednesday, March the 19th, 2014.
At Courts, every day we bring affordability, convenience, innovation, and style to over 1 million customers in 11 countries. From homes to communities, we are proud to make a difference in the lives of many across the region. Courts, bringing value home.
Barbadian and Caribbean tourism officials have welcomed the reform of Britain's airport departure tax. That means travelers to the Caribbean will pay less. From April next year, all long-haul flights from the UK, Barbados' biggest market, will pay the same air passenger duty as the tax is called. At present, it is cheaper to fly to the US than the Caribbean, despite often similar distances, a situation Barbados and other Caribbean nations had called unfair. The British Finance Minister George Osborne called it crazy and unjust when he announced the removal of the anomaly in his spring budget. The change will be seen as a big win for member countries of the Barbados-based Caribbean Tourism Organization. Tourism Minister Richard Seeley and the chair of the CTO, Barbara Nicholson-Doty, said they were delighted with the announcement, with officials saying the region had worked incredibly hard to make the British tax fairer. Government will have to do much more than fix the fiscal deficit if it wants to regain full private sector confidence. That's what a survey of more than 1,300 global CEOs have indicated in a new PricewaterhouseCoopers survey. Oliver Jordan, PwC Engagement Leader Advisory Services, who presented the results, said they mirrored what was happening in Barbados. He says there is a need for greater collaboration between the public and private sectors. The UWI Guild of Students is putting aside the disappointment of the cancellation of this year's official university carnival by focusing on the fallout from the introduction of tuition fees from the next academic year. The carnival has been scrapped on cost grounds, though, as we've reported, a private arrangement is in the works. More on that in a short while. But let's stick to the Guild, whose president, Damani Patter, says they are putting the expected cancellation behind them, and he's more worried about the numbers who will seek to enter UWI this year.
Well, we actually have those numbers. I have those numbers before me. And my office will be holding a travel press conference next week, where we'll be discussing that issue separately. What I will say at this point is that the numbers are something of interest, and if the numbers are anything to go by, then the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, is in serious trouble as it relates to student intake and student numbers in the September semester.
Well, despite the official UWI Carnival being called off, students will still be playing Mass. Powered by 4, the Cropover Group is filling the void with its Juvenile Carnival. That's a new name, and is aiming for 1,500 revelers on the road on April 5th. Bands will parade from the party stand along Spring Garden Highway to the roundabout at the bottom of University Hill and back. So, another start for Cropover. Barbados needs adequate measurement and inspection or metrology systems to determine whether local services reach international standards. That's according to Hayden Ryan, a senior executive of the Barbados National Standards Institution. The metrology system is considered vital for innovation, trade, quality of life, and effective regulation. Mr. Ryan says proper measuring equipment is required in Barbados for areas like the much-touted medical tourism, adding that his organization is in place to provide such a service.
BNSI is the Barbados National Metrology Institute, and every country has one. And they're building relationships between these institutes and the regulators, the educators, and especially the users. There are many businesses in Barbados with need for calibration services, for intercomparisons, for proficiency testing, and all of this is captured by the science of metrology, which is, again, the science of measurement.
Mr. Ryan said some metrology services could not be provided in Barbados and had to be outsourced to Trinidad and Tobago, increasing costs for local companies. Governor General Sir Elliot Belgrave was moved to tears as Alma Mater Basketball Primary School honored his sterling contribution to national life. Students of the St. Peter's School sang and gave a rundown of Sir Elliot's career as a lawyer, prosecutor, High Court judge, and Queen's representative in Barbados. In a short address, In a short address, the Governor General told the students that his story of success could also be theirs and urged them to stay away from negative influences and behaviors. In news about our neighbors, Liat's governance structure is at the root of its problems, says the leader of St. Lucia's main opposition party, the United Workers' Party. Alan Chasney, a former Minister of Civil Aviation, says the airline has repeatedly failed to turn a profit despite several interventions, including a debt write-off 6 years ago by the Caribbean Development Bank and American and Canadian governments. The longtime critic of the airline said regional governments had also ensured the airline had no competition on several Eastern Caribbean routes.
The problem that Liat has now is that the same governments who are propping up Liat have domestic financial problems by themselves, and do not have the financial wherewithal to continue subsidizing an inefficient company. The private sector and many people have made a lot of recommendations to Liat. One, the board of directors of Liat cannot be permanent secretaries. They must be people who have business sense and also have some understanding of the aviation industry. The airline must be allowed to make the necessary decisions. This continuing threat to eliminate unprofitable routes, to me, is unfounded.
A drought is reported to be causing an extreme emergency in northeastern Haiti, wiping out sorely needed crops and livestock. PA Gary Matthew of the government's Food Security Agency said the hardship is especially evident in some schools where there's food for students but no water to cook. Other schools have neither food nor water, he said. Domestic violence continues to cause great distress in Guyana, with officials saying it has reached alarming levels. Karen D'Souza, a women's rights activist, has called for a national response to the crisis. In sport, some of the greats of West Indies cricket have lost their coaching positions in this year's Caribbean Premier League. Instead, the likes of Desmond Haynes, Gordon Greenidge, Sir Andy Roberts, Sir Viv Richards and Sir Curtly Ambrose will take on what's called mentorship roles to the franchise teams. Only Guyana's Roger Harper of the Caribbean Coaches has retained his position. Former India Test cricketer Robin Singh, who was born in Trinidad and Tobago, will be in charge of the Barbados Tridents. The other head coaches are from Australia, England and South Africa. The West Indies have beaten Sri Lanka by 33 runs in the latest warm-up match before they begin their defence of the World 2020 title. Scores: West Indies 172 for 5 off their 20 overs. Sri Lanka, beaten finalists last time, 139 off 19.2 overs. Dwayne Swift top scored with 60 for the Windies, while Sunil Ryan and Dwayne Bravo shared 7 wickets. Out of favour, West Indies left-arm spinner Suleiman Ben will turn out for the English charity cricket team Lashins All-Stars. It has been confirmed that the 32-year-old will play 12 matches and also appear in a special charity match. And finally, a South Carolina man was eating at a Taco Bell restaurant when his poor manners led to him being hit with a chair and choked by another customer. According to police, the 20-year-old was dining with a friend when he burped. Another man approached and asked the victim if he had belched without saying, "Excuse me." Mr. Manners then went after the victim with a chair and struck him in the elbow. The alleged assailant then grabbed the victim by the throat and attempted to headbutt him. A restaurant worker stepped in and got the man to leave. That's where I take my leave. From Nation News for Wednesday.